I'm just going to go through the news again, much like a couple weeks ago. And there was some big news items, and it caused us, I think, a little bit as a community to sort of talk about some things that we've been talking about for a long time, at least in football analytics and football in general. And the first one was that the Vikings did finally release Dalvin Cook. Just to bring up Dalvin's numbers here as far as what he's costing here. Dalvin Cook with a post June 1 cut, and at sumersports.com, we have an article about what the post June 1 deadline actually means. It means that all prorated money, in this case for Cook, it's that 2024 dead money charge that you see on the right-hand side in the pink, $3.1 million. That is what the Vikings ended up saving by waiting until June 1st to either trade or cut him. If they would have waited before June 1st, that $3.1 million would have been accelerated to the 2023. Now, people will say, "Oh, what's $3 million? You'd rather have Dalvin Cook on the team than have that $3 million." Well, what the Browns showed last year is that money can obviously be rolled over as long as you're above the certain threshold for spending every year. You can roll over that money into the following year, and if there's no other use for it, right? And so it's funny, but like dead money, of course, decreases in its onerousness as the years progress. Cap space obviously decreases as well because the value of the cap goes up. So it might not be worth as much next year, but at least they gave themselves the option to use it this year. So that's what they're doing there. And, for the people who say Dalvin Cook, is a pretty good back still. This is my colleague Tej Seth, who often hosts the show with me. This is rushing yards over expected, which is an estimate based upon some pre-play, but also, things like down and distance and all that. There are some versions of it that'll take on PFF grades, or other versions of it that will take on, the position of the blockers and stuff like that. Dalvin Cook is simply not a good running back anymore as far as running the football. And it's weird because, usually when a running back loses it, they lose their speed and stuff like that. In the case of Dalvin Cook, it wasn't so much that he lost the speed. I mean, we saw him break off a long run against the Miami Dolphins at Hard Rock. We saw them break off an 80-yard run to help the Vikings come back from a 17-point deficit against Buffalo. Catch a screen pass, take it to the distance to tie the game, I think, against Indianapolis in that, that crazy comeback that they had. It's not so much that he doesn't have the speed, it's that he can't break tackles anymore. And I think a shoulder injury where he didn't get it repaired, properly was part of that. But he simply can't make people, if he can't make somebody miss, he can't gain yardage. And I think that doesn't grow particularly well as you get older. The Vikings with, general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, opt to go into the season with a very running backs don't matter kind of analytically optimal room of Alexander Mattison making the $3.5 million per year over two, a pretty effective runner when he's had an opportunity, a very good receiver out of the backfield. You kind of pay for knownness there where, ultimately he's sort of taking on that, if he can't be the actual bell cow guy, he can at least be pass protector guy. He can be blitz pickup guy when they really need him on late yardage or late down and long yardage situations. And then if he, somebody between Ty Chandler, a second-year player from North Carolina, Kene Nwangwu from Iowa State, who's been a very good kick returner, 3 touchdowns during his first 2 seasons. Dwayne McBride, a guy that they just drafted from UAB, a very good runner, does really well in a lot of the metrics. I think that they'll be able to fish together a very good running back group out of that room. And when you think about their offense now, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson needs to, obviously get signed. I don't think he'll step on the field again for the Vikings until he has a contract. And KJ Osborne, along with TJ Hawkinson, another guy that they kind of have to make a decision about whether to extend this year or wait until next year. An offensive line with 2 good tackles. Garrett Bradbury emerged a little bit last year. That's going to be a pretty good offense. And I think people are going to be surprised at how little they miss Cook, to be honest with you, just because he wasn't particularly great last year, save for a few explosive plays. So that's one piece of news. Obviously this is meant to be for a while. One of the reasons they took this long, and just to give you guys an idea, is that if you want to trade a player, you can't designate them a post June 1 cut, right? So again, when we look at, Dalvin Cook's, stuff there, they would have, so they saved $9 million with this cut. If they would have traded him before the June 1st deadline, they can't designate that post June 1. And so, from that perspective, you can always cut a guy post June 1 and then you get the money after June 1, but you can't trade a player for that same effect. So they were certainly holding out hope for a trade. Once that never materialized, once it got past June 1st, it never really, worked out that way for the Minnesota Vikings. So they ended up releasing him.